we're all still reeling from that madness that was Keir Starmer's speech yesterday. This is a man who for years has stood up and said, I don't believe there should be controls on migration. I believe we should basically have immigrants, legal and illegal, coming into this country to do the jobs that British people don't want to do. And this is all important. Suddenly yesterday, Chameleon Starmer the chameleon stands up and gives it, I think this is becoming an island of strangers, the United Kingdom. We need to make sure that, you know, this is a privilege living here. It's not a right. People need to learn English. They need to work harder. All the very phrases, common sense phrases this radio station's been using, Nigel Farage has been speaking about. So many people are going, hold on a second, mate. If that's what you genuinely believe today, but yesterday you didn't, what are you going to believe tomorrow? Because nobody is buying the fact this man flip-flops. I mean, that was a donut yesterday, wasn't it? 360. We want to know what you think. 0344 499 1000. We're going to be joined now and delighted. My next guest is Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. Trevor, it's been a while. How are you, sir?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you, Jeremy.
Welcome to the madness of drive time. 24 hours after Starmer Chameleon, as I call him, this extraordinary speech. And just as we, if it's okay to say this to you, as we were watching open-mouthed this speech, footage behind him of another 400 plus male, single, possibly criminal migrants coming into this country, giving it the finger and waving whilst we lay out the red carpet. Farcical, Trevor Kavanagh.
Absolutely. And as Nigel Farage pointed out, they're not just single and young, they're of fighting age. And this is extremely alarming. We've gone past the point where, as Nigel again says, that nobody trusts a word that this Prime Minister utters. The fact is that he's a proven and unmitigated liar. He's a hypocrite. And he's been found out, and that's why his party's done so badly. He's made every possible mistake it is possible to make for a new Prime Minister in the first 6 months in office. Not just mistakes, but lies, which he either lied during his manifesto or failed to declare what he's planning to do. And he's been found out. But the big tragedy is not just that he's been found out, it is that we still have another 4 years of a Starmer-led Labour government, or at least a Labour government. I'm not sure Starmer will survive.
I mean, I think that's the extraordinary thing. And we'll talk more about immigration as this conversation develops. But here is a man who came to power with this huge majority not a year ago and is now fighting, I nearly said fires after what happened, probably not the right thing, on several fronts. I remember saying during the election campaign, I remember when we talked, and it was difficult for us we have to be very careful when an election's going on, but he invited so many people into his tent. He had Natalie Alfick, a far-right Tory MP from Dover. He invited some woman who'd been thrown out for whites. I mean, all sorts of madness. And I remember thinking, if you promise too many people too many things, you end up unstuck. Now, for me, 11 weeks into his premiership, he made the biggest mistake, his poll tax moment, by taking away the pensioners' winter fuel allowance. And that, I think it was from there that it just got worse and worse. And I don't think the British public know what this man is about or believe anything that he says anymore.
The reason is, Jeremy, that he doesn't know what he's about either. He actually said in terms that when he was fighting for the leadership when Jeremy Corbyn was falling apart, that he didn't understand politics. He didn't even like politics. And the fact is that as a Prime Minister in charge of the political nature of this country, he has been proved to be utterly incompetent in the role of Prime Minister. The things that he's got wrong, from being mildly corrupt on gifts and goodies from and freebies from donors, to the gender wars over whether a man could have, a woman could have a penis, and so on. I mean, these are grotesque examples of not just hypocrisy, but trying to prove to us that truth is fiction and lies are the facts.
And you covered politics for The Sun for so long as a former political editor. What I find almost extraordinary over the last few months is how the Labour Party, having presumably prepared for months, years to be the next government, are seemingly so deaf to the real concerns of the British people. So you've got immigration. We're going to crush the gangs. Not a gang crushed. 35,000 people have come across the channel since they took office. We're going to deal with dropping your energy bills by setting up some ridiculous thing called GB Energy that's run by a bloke called Jürgen in Stockport who hasn't even got an office. GB Energy is nothing. Bills have gone up because I'll tell you what, we're going to grab land from farmers and rely on wind, and we know there's not enough wind, so then we'll have to import it and your bills will go up. And I think the British people are going, hold on a minute, so you haven't stopped any boats, and we're being still flooded with migrants to this country to our own detriment. It's not racist, it's true. Our services, public services are struggling, and we, the taxpayer, don't feel we're getting value for money. We've got issues with net zero and our bills are going through the roof. We've got a justice system that seems to say to Lucy Connolly, we talked about it before the break, you know, a mother of one who's had some problems, wrote some very harsh and wrong things that none of us condone after the Southport riots, but is languishing in jail for 31 months, right? A mother of one. Whilst I'm very sorry if people are offended by what I'm going to say, whilst that paedophile Hugh Edwards is walking free with a BBC pension. The morality and the balance and the priority in this country under this government has disappeared, and that's why I think Nigel Farage's words are garnering such huge momentum, Trevor.
Absolutely, and I think you didn't even mention in that long list the Rotherham child rape act. I mean, that is the most heinous possible crime against ordinary, innocent white girls by the very people that we are waving into this country in very large numbers. Now, one of the problems here is not just the illegal immigration, which I think, of course, is the eye-catching horror of people who will be warehoused in luxury hotels dotted around the country. But it's also the legal immigration figures, which very nearly topped 1 million the year before last, and for which the Tories are to blame too. So it's not just Labour. But the thing about the Labour Party is that they are so deceitful about their objectives. In fact, I'm not even sure that they have any defined objectives, because one of the problems with this Starmer-led government is that the Labour Party he leads is divided in every possible way, from extreme left socialist left-wingers to people who do have fairly sensible views, and they are at war. It is an amazing thing to realise that if indeed Starmer ever goes, we will get much worse in his place.
Well, I think this is really interesting, and I said something earlier. There's so much. I love talking to you. You could sit and talk for hours. You think that Corbyn, at least he had conviction. I disagree with everything that Jeremy Corbyn said, but he stood on a ticket that he didn't deviate from, and he got more votes. Keir Starmer has flip-flopped to a degree, and you're right. I think the left will overpower Keir Starmer in the end within the Labour Party and say, thank you for getting us elected, you're done. And the alternative is, I mean, he's frightening. And I agree with Nigel in today's Sun when he says, you know, on the very morning Sir Keir Starmer's fake sort of views were being, you know, given out to the British public, a very different picture was emerging in Calais and Dover. A group of fighting-age men clad in Palestinian face covering, posted a video on TikTok as they attempted to enter Britain illegally, joyously saying, this is a country, we'll get what we want. And I keep coming back to it, and I'm so with Nigel on this, that we've always been, Trevor, haven't we, the nation that does the right thing. We've always been the nation that morally leads the way. To me, we've been apologising for the colonialism for far too bleeding long, and I think it's high time that we concentrated, and I'm being honest, on our own people. And I think what's happened out there, which is what Nigel has I think, been able to buy into, is that people have changed out there. They don't care less, but what they're saying is, hold on a second, I've lived my life correctly, I've paid my taxes, educated my kids, I've never had a handout, I've never broken the law. And I'm 8th in the bleeding queue. And that's not fair, and that's not right, and that's not justifiable. And that is where I think reform is finding huge momentum from.
Yes, and I think that one thing we're very lucky to have is a radio station like this, which is a platform for free speech.
Yeah.
And we can say things that lots of newspapers will not say and cannot say without fear of being almost shut down by the Stop the Hate campaign leaders who would try to destroy our advertising revenues. But the simple fact is that immigration has, over the last 25 years, transformed and destroyed in many ways the fabric of our society. If you live in outer countryside and rural areas, a long way from the urban environment which attracts so many of the migrants, you don't notice it. But if you live in the very heart of it, as I do in the East End, you know that basically everybody to your east is Bangladeshi, everybody to the west is from the Emirates and from the Middle East, and you see fewer and fewer, and you hear less and less English around the country, either spoken or visible.
I don't see mine slightly different. I'm not against people who will give something to my country coming here, but what I'm against absolutely, when we are skint and can't even afford to pay the interest on the debts we've got, is us pretending it's okay to wipe the backsides of people who have come into this country and have given nothing and are taking the mickey. And they say to me every day, how do you stop the boats? Because Starmer yesterday, that speech, there was no cap, there was no explanation, there were no numbers. That was just rhetoric. The Tories exactly the same. Rwanda didn't get off the ground. For me, it's really simple. Stop giving France £500 million. Stop making the benefit system so appealing to people. Say to people from other countries, right? You've escaped a war-torn country. Well, the first country you get to that isn't war-torn, stay there. And by the way, if you do care about your family, why are your wife and kids back in this war-torn country? The British people are seriously of their politicians. I mean, they're going to demand facts. Did you discover Starmer's 10-point government plan? No more automatic citizenship, tougher English requirements, care worker crackdown. The only reason they've been allowed in is because it's cheaper workers. That's an absolute disgrace. From foreign criminals facing the boot, no more loopholes, higher costs for migrant workers, back to basics for work visas, strict rules for shortages, limited refugee access and a crackdown on foreign students. All great words, but what's the reality? Is Keir Starmer seriously going to stand up and turn any boats back? No, because that's what needs doing, Trevor Kavanagh. 1,000,000% that needs doing.
Well, not just turning them back either, but getting rid of them, the ones that are here illegally and who are making no contribution to the country whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Denmark has already begun to do this, and very successfully indeed. And allegedly, Keir Starmer has been watching their progress with interest. And some of these measures that he's introduced, at least he's verbalized them, have been implemented and effectively implemented in Denmark, which is a liberal country. It's much more to the left, than the Tory party here, or Nigel Farage. But they are demanding that they learn to speak Danish. They are punishing anyone who has committed any serious crime by expelling them immediately. They have expelled very large numbers of unwanted arrivals in that country. And this is a liberal country which has reduced illegal immigration by 90% in the process.
Wow.
And
then you look,
and they're in the European Union. They have Schengen, they have free movement, and they're dealing with it.
You look at Trump, and we've said it repeatedly on this show, there's not everything that he does or says that I agree with. But here's a man who got elected with winning the majority vote for the first time in decades. He said, I'm going to stop the votes. I'm going to close the borders. I remember seeing some footage, Trevor, about 3 weeks after the inauguration speech. It was a Mexican woman and her kids and husband, and they were all crying. And the woman said to the camera, she went, there's no point in us going because we can't get in or we'll be thrown out. And I remember looking at the camera going, yes, sorry, yes, he said that and he did that and that's why he got elected. But I fear, and you've been around a lot longer than me, that we don't have conviction politicians anymore, Trevor Kavanagh. I think we have politicians who are obsessed. They react to what they think a focus group will tell them or what a bunch of advisors will tell them. The gut instinct of any politician, surely right now in this country, should be this. The British people want answers to an immigration problem. It doesn't make them racist. They want problems with this net zero madness dealt with, because it's not that we don't care about the environment, but actually we care about seeing a doctor or a dentist or our kids getting a school lunch. That's paying the mortgage. Those are the things that matter. And as this government and its ideology, and in fact a series of politicians who just don't seem to get it, I think the British people are becoming more and more frustrated. Now, just talking about Trump and not allying him to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage's local election results were phenomenal. 677 new councillors, 10 councils, 2 mayors and a new MP. The spotlight's now on those councils for reform to do a competent job. Do you, with all your experience, believe that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister of this country?
Until those elections, I wasn't sure. I think that he'd already begun to make the sort of progress that he's now achieved in that period of time. But I do think, actually, that because there's been almost absolute silence from the Conservative Party for the last 6 months, because the public has sussed Starmer as a liar and a hypocrite. I mean, you have a government which is now in office for the next 4 years, which is led by a man who doesn't actually believe a single word that he said yesterday.
No, I agree with Nigel in the paper today. In The Sun, I think he believes in open borders. I think that was just what he thought on a Monday. I think by tomorrow he'll be saying, anybody come in. I don't think he knows what he thinks.
That's what he wants. That's what he means. He does know that. But he's a liar. He's a hypocrite. But the thing is that Nigel has a golden opportunity now with actual councils under his control and time to start doing the reforms that he's promised, making sure that the council tax pays for the things that the council taxpayers want, and getting rid of all of the nice-to-have nonsense that is part of the gender wars, the DEI, the diversity, and the green agenda. If he removes those spending powers and makes the money, directs the money towards the interests of the council taxpayers, I do think he will actually transform our politics and could easily end up leading the biggest party into the next parliament.
I think the point is, and you know, there are people who will say, oh, come on, Nigel Farage has never, you know, he's never held ministerial office and he doesn't have experience. And Reform, of course, their candidates make a point that they're successful business people and they know how to do things correctly. The thing about the vibe that I get, this station talk gets, is that the British people have seen years of the Tories do something for 5 or 10 years and Labour will come and do the difference, and this sort of uniparty sort of balancing, sort of swinging sort of action. I think they're so fed up with the lies. I think, you know, starting with Theresa May, Cameron, I mean, you know, what was his name? I forget. Was that Liberal Nick Clegg? You know, student tuition fees. He was a liar just to get into to a role of popularity. Cameron, successful-ish, won the election, then of course the referendum. Theresa May got rid of all the police, dealt with all the issues there. I just feel that the country is almost at a point where it's saying, could Reform do any worse than the shower we're having right now and the shower we had for the last couple of years? You mentioned Badenoch, right? If I hear, I mean, somebody passed me this today. I'd love your take on this. Kemi Badenoch is currently doing a review, Trevor Kavanagh, into what went wrong in the local elections. She's been doing an 11-month bloody review in what went wrong with the general election. What went wrong, love, is you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and the British people stopped listening because you're a bunch of liars. And the same with the local election. Not rocket science. Should she not, as the leader of the official opposition, be at his jugular today, Keir Starmer, about immigration? Haven't heard a word. It's all on Nigel. All on Nigel Farage. Not a word from Badenoch.
I don't think you can have 6 months of silence from the opposition, the official opposition, and expect people to still think that they're going to vote Tory. So you're right there. But you mentioned the fact that Nigel Farage has no experience in government. Nor did Tony Blair.
No.
He was an opposition leader. Nor did David Cameron. Nor did Jeremy Corbyn. And indeed, nor did Keir Starmer. So...
listen, I make no secret, Trevor. Trevor, I make no secret on this station. I voted Tory all my life, and I voted Reform. And I'll tell you why I voted Reform, and I'm allowed as an individual to say that, because I hated the fact that the Tory party stood up and said everything that he is saying is far right. I was brought up to believe in low taxation, a strong military, secure borders, good housekeeping, and NHS free at the point of entry. But I was also brought up to believe that it was about doing right by yourselves and your neighbours and your countrymen and women. And I think that when Nigel Farage started talking along with Richard Tice about things like that, that's not far right. Those are the principles the Tory party abandoned, in my humble opinion. That's why I gravitated. I'd give Nigel Farage the keys to number 10 tomorrow, because this shower and the shower before, I don't think British people have confidence, mate.
And I wasn't disagreeing with you. What I was saying was that, in fact, the fact that he has a clean skin gives him tremendous advantage.
Yeah.
He has quite clearly got the ear and the eye of the British public.
Yeah.
And that gives him the sort of momentum which will allow him, I think, as I say, during the 4 years he has to prove himself with some sort of leadership ability in terms of local economics and education, and on all sorts of things like diversity and green net zero nonsense. These are precious opportunities for Nigel Farage, and he can come in without any baggage whatsoever apart from a success story on the local authority front. And I think that people will give him a huge amount of credit. It will be with a vast sigh of relief that they will at last be listened to and have their feelings and their votes taken seriously.
Couldn't agree more.
I think that there's a lot to be hoped for in the way of suddenly waking up to reality, which we've been living without for the last 15 years.
Completely agree. Listen, Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, so great to have you on, my friend. Thank you. And for anybody tuning in, great article in The Sun today. Keir's fake news, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform writing, and all about this immigration madness, a 10-point government plan that actually says absolutely zilch. Make your own minds up. But the truth is, if for Starmer, does he believe that? Because Sunday, he thought the borders should be open. Yesterday, he thinks they should be closed. Not sure about today. Tomorrow could be different. What we crave, do we not, my friends, is conviction, belief. We just need to buy into somebody or something. And this lot, no way. What do you make of it all? 0344 499 1000. Talk Drive.